This looks like a jumbled up mess, but hopefully as I explain some of it, it won't be quite as jumbled up.
Talk louder, Ann.
Okay. This is the stick man, Lynn stick man, but this is something I saw not long ago of the stages. This is our journey. Before we were created, this was God, all in all. No movement, invisible, not experiencing or expressing at all. Just the still, void, nothingness that contains allness that God is. But when God said in Genesis, it's not good for man to be alone. A deeper level of that, he was saying, I don't want to be alone. So if it's not good for man to be alone, it's not good for God to be alone. Because God wanted to experience this three-dimensional world that he had created. But he couldn't do it in his invisible nothingness, non-movement. So he decided to take a part out of himself. See, Adam and Eve is an allegory of this. He took a part of himself out of himself so he could fellowship with himself outside himself. So he says, I'll make another part of me, and I'll make it visible. So he took a part of himself, and he made another part of himself outside himself, and he called this part of his visible self man. Yeah. So this is, we're born, we're in this dimension, and I call this the babe who needs milk of the Word. Okay? We are hidden in God. The hidden treasure is us. To find God hidden in our humanity. And so this is, Lynn has told us, this is our Elohim part. This is this. And this is our Jehovah part, our humanity, our ego. We need that part for God through us, as us, to experience the sense realm. God doesn't taste cake till you eat it. He doesn't know what beef tastes like till you eat it. So he's enjoying this, but we don't understand this when we're babes in Christ. So then we grow, and then we come to realize that Christ is in us. We become a son, and now we can eat the meat of the Word. And so right here, this is the 3.5 and the 3.5. Right here is been a closed portal in our heart. Our heart is divided. It's double-minded. So what is happening is we're growing into here. We're opening up, and this portal of this heart chamber, this energy center, this chakra, this endocrine gland, whatever you want to call it, is all the same thing. It begins to open up. And we begin to see more and more of the things of God. And this is duality. This is one. Love, light, and life. No movement. Now over here, this part of him and us, it's duality. This is love, light, and life. This is fear, death, and darkness. This is where the dance has to come. We have to learn to dance. There's nothing wrong with darkness. It's the partner. There's nothing wrong with whatever's going in your life that you don't like. That's your partner. We don't grow when everything is hunky-dory and we're in a bed of roses. The things that we want to get rid of are the things that's put in our life to push us to another level, to cause our growth. And as we learn to embrace those things, instead of like we were taught in the charismania world, get rid of them, you got to die to this and die to that. No, you don't need to die to anything. You can't die anyway. Embrace your humanity.
Yes.
When you embrace your humanity, it's God embracing you and you embracing God, and you begin to do the dance. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong. Nothing ever went wrong.
No.
We have fought it in the double-mindedness. We've only ever been separated from God in our own mind. Never separated in His mind, only in our mind. And so we're growing in here and opening this portal begins to let the love, light, and life infiltrate. God is coming down and we are going up. Wow. It's not robbery. to say you're equal with God. It doesn't bring God down. It lifts us up to say we're equal. So we're coming up out of our humanity, if you will. And then we grow and we grow. And finally, God's goal is from where He started here with nothing but Himself to so bring man into a duality without separation with Him, that it's all God again. But now He's not in the invisible, no movement. He can't eat cake and ice cream, but now He can. And His goal is for us to get this in our thick heads and let go of this. Not trying to get rid of it, embracing it, letting God overcome it, letting God embrace it, letting your partner lead the dance. It's the spirit and the soul dancing. It's God and man. It's you and your helpmate dancing. And as we learn to do the dance, your life begins to change. If a man and a woman are dancing and she submits and lets him lead, she follows him. But in following him, when he steps forward, she's stepping back. When she steps forward, he's stepping back. It's 2 in 1. One unit, 2 in 1 movement, 1 harmony, 1 rhythm. And when we can get into that flow in the spirit where we are in rhythm with the vibration and the frequency that God is on, then you create heaven on earth for yourself. And until this portal opens and we're closed off, this is the hell that you create for yourself. Not that it is hell anywhere except in your mind. But the quicker we embrace our humanity, embrace those things that you've been taught to pray against, bind it up, cast it out. No, just embrace it. Let God dance with you. And the more you dance with God, the more this portal opens and God's purpose begins to be fulfilled in your life. Until finally, it's God is all and in all. The 2 in 1. Still 2, but 1. 1 coin, 2 sides. 1 dance with 2 partners. And this is what He wants us to learn. To dance with Him. He's always ready. He's always got the beat. He's always in sync. He is ready. He's just waiting for us to submit, to surrender, and let Him lead. He wants to, He doesn't want to help you live your life. He wants to live the life that's in you Himself. Through you, as you. As you. So I look at this as spirit as me. And if I had another dog or if I had a cat, I would name it Sam, because and every time I called it, it would remind me, spirit as me. I am dead and my life is hid. Me trying to lead, me trying to dominate, me trying to live a life separate from God is dead. That means it's no longer operating. It's no longer in dominance. It's stopped. It has submitted and surrendered. And now it's not me living, but it's Christ living. Not just in me, through me, as me. Don't you know you are the Christ? Creation is crying for one thing. Creation prays and intercedes and groans for one thing. Not for healing of the earth, not for peace on earth, not for anything but one thing. For you and you and you and me to be manifest for who we are. The Word of God made flesh. We're not human. But God never called us human beings. He called us His sons.
One son.
One. Humanity is one son. God has one son. It's a many-membered son. Each one of us are a cell in the Son of God, just like all these little tiny millions of cells. If you named every little cell in your body and gave them a name, it would still be one you. All of us as cells in the body of God is God manifest, God made visible, God made flesh. God dancing everywhere in His creation, just loving and dancing in His creation. Hallelujah. This is what our journey is. Going from God to God in man, to opening up, that God in man begins to dance, so that ultimately God and man are one. Into where one day you can stand before any man, not in pride, but in deep humility. And declare, if you've seen me, you've seen my Father.
Yes.
If you've seen me, you've seen God. Because I no longer live. It's God living through me.
Nothing else.
In you. And if you receive me as God, and I receive you as God, the whole earth and the whole creation can enter into that one dance. That's God's heart. That's what He's waiting for. That's what He's patient for. We are the fruit He's waiting for out of us. Just to dance with Him. And when you're dancing, you're happy. And you're just light. And you're just free. And He wants us to live that way all the time. This is when you heaven has taken you. Earth and heaven have met. It's a new heaven. And this is the new creation. Not me trying to get rid of my pride. Not me trying to get rid of my ego. Not me trying to die to this or that. Not me trying to be self-righteous or holier than thou. This is the new creation, the 2-in-1. This is the fruit of the earth. This is what everything cries out for us to come into this knowing. You can't believe it never manifested. You've got to know.
That's the norm.
Adam knew Eve. When Adam knew Eve, she conceived. When we know God, we conceive. That word conceive. He knew her. He intercoursed her. He put His seed in her. And they brought forth something between the two that was a new thing. Between these two is coming forth a new thing. You call it God, you call it man, it's two sides to one coin. When you put coffee in water, you create a new thing. And you cannot separate it then.
That's right.
We cannot be separated from God because God is us. Hallelujah.
Did you ever think about being a stick man? As I was listening to Annie this morning, I heard this. They have eyes to see, but they see not. And they have ears to hear, but they hear not. And Jesus said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. But you can't look for that by the appearance of the eye. I was invited, Carol and I was invited a few years ago to go to West Virginia to do a meeting. And there was a group there that had been listening to my audio messages for quite some time, and they asked me to come, so I went. And they were disappointed when I showed up. And they told me they were. Because they said, we have been listening to you for months. We've been thrilled. But we thought you were a fully manifested Son of God. Because they see my physical condition, you know. So when Jesus said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father, He wasn't talking about looking at His physicality. To see Him, you have to look inside. When He speaks, you have to hear His voice. And if you hear His voice, you've seen the Father. That's what we are. And that's all we can be, is who He is. Amen.
This might not even take 10 minutes. I want Lynn, because there's so much emphasis on the stick man, to have all the time this morning to deal with the stick man. I'll take the afternoon session, or who knows. Lynn are a tag team, so we're just going to flow. But when I saw this, I had to say something, because I saw Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles, and the dimension that is beyond that. Because God is a multi-dimensional being. Has He got 7, 12? I don't know. But I know that I am a multi-dimensional, and I'm experiencing fifth-dimensional energy, even though I live in a 3-dimensional body, or at the present time. Because the more you come into the present moment, the more you can collapse time. So this is Passover, and for every feast, there's a connection to the zodiac. Then you have Pentecost. Then you have Tabernacles, and this is where people are stuck because they're stuck in the contrast of these three instead of moving here. So when I was looking at this kind of hit me this morning because there's something you have to understand. This is why just owning a Strong's Concordance will not help you. You have to understand the difference between what I call Hebrew symbols and Greek thought. And you know, these two looked at creation totally different. When you looked at creation, you can look at it from a Hebraic point of view, which is the true point of view, or you can look at it from the Greek point of view. Well, somebody said, what about the ancient stuff? We'll get there. But what you have to understand is in the heart chamber that Lynn is describing, what we have here is several words like the word napesh, which was more of a whole cosmic circle. The soul and the spirit is often used interchangeable. For spirit you have ruach, and by the way there's an Aramaic equivalent of that. And then you have, in my notes, see when I get definitions I get them live. You know, I don't do so much studying, but when I'm around you I get connections. But then I saw this and I thought, okay, this is the wholeness that you are. But you know part of that is this word right here, ego, which the ancient writers spoke of a divine ego and also spoke of a carnal ego. And ego is not bad. Even Robert Girdlestone, in Synonyms of the New Testament, called this the pulse. And you can either be in the higher vibration or the lower vibration. But then you have all these words in the New Testament and it will confuse the snot out of you. And it's something I have been a life study for years because you have all these Greek words. For instance, the word ego, that is a Greek word, by the way. You also have this word, nous. Okay? That's the word for mind.
Yes.
But you also have a Greek word right here that's called prin. And it actually says in your Greek lexicon, it is the midsection. There's a Greek word for every single dimension of the stick man. There's not a Hebrew word, but there's a Greek word, and it corresponds to the Sanskrit words that are for chakras. So when I looked at these components, okay, so I woke up this morning, I'm not a good singer, but I was singing, and I have not heard this song in years, because I spent years in black churches. Please don't be offended by saying that. You know, years ago I called a person, you are an African American. And it was Marquis Hunt's wife, and she looked at me and she said, I am not an African American, I am black, call me what I am. I said, excuse me. And she said, if you're going to be polite and try to label me, then leave the table. So that's why I say what I say. So, remember what I talked about? You guys see the divine? Quit looking at the layers. So, when I was looking at this, and I used to hear this song, will the circle be unbroken? Well, I kind of metamorphosed it to metamorpho. You know, I kind of made it more metaphorical, metaphysical. Because I ain't going up yonder. I don't know where yonder is, but I'm not going. So, when I was looking at this in the heart chakra, there is a Greek word that's called cardia, and it is translated in your Greek New Testament as the word heart. And in some cases it's the spirit, in some cases it's the soul. You know why? Because it is the process of all of this right here. That's why Jesus said, if you do this and not doubt in your heart, doubt in Greek means to differ. Now here's our problem. When I'm looking at things from this point of view, I'm not seeing this point of view. Or I'm not seeing this point of view. And what we do not understand is for every level that we see things from a totally different perspective.
Yes. Yes.
And we are still trying to get this kind of thing, but we are still looking at it from a three-dimensional point of view. People do not know how to think dimensionally. We are too linear. Well, I got news for you. And I'm setting Lynn up here because if you're going to deal with Hebrew, you got to look at it from this perspective. Because Greek, Latin, Russian is all a one-dimensional language. But Hebrew and Sanskrit is a three-dimensional language. That's why there's a number, that's why there's a color. And we in the body of Christ are trying to fit a Bible that is a multi-dimensional book, because it's a book about you, into this deal and then understand it. So when you look at all of this right here, this is the process. So when you look at the heart, you say, well, how could good things and bad things come out of the heart? Because it's all the process of this dimension. And listen, there is no such thing as good or bad. That's Greek thought. And if I can help teach you that this weekend, we have split man up trying to understand him. Because what is duality? It's this versus that. In this realm, it's and or. In this realm, it's what? This versus that. Look, I'm either Pentecostal or I'm Baptist. I'm either this or I'm that. Then you get in this realm, well, I'm still this, but I really don't know what the hell that is. Then you get in this realm, and you start focusing in, but you still struggle because you have a belief system that says, you going crazy. But when you get into this realm, you introduce to my favorite word, paradox. Because in paradox, people ask me recently, do you believe in the finished work? I go, yes and no. That's my ultimate answer, paradox. Because in paradox, I'm neither trying to say it's this or that, it's and or.
Yes, yes.
But most of the church world do not know how to think beyond this realm, and they're trying to interpret a Bible that was in that realm into this realm. And you have to understand that the more we mature, the more we will understand our own process of our own heart. Discernment is not knowing what God wants. Discernment is knowing the process in your own heart. Go on a 21-day fast. You will not see God in Technicolor. You will see how much we have fragmented and broken down our own heart.
Yes.
And these Hebraic words, which you can define, all talk about something that is flowing. In Hebrew, everything is a verb. You recognize this? That's a glyph. It's hieroglyphics. It's water. It's a verb. God is a verb. But in Greek thought, we've split man up and said, okay, I'm an ego or I'm a nos. This word is one of the most controversial words. This word actually means perception. And your translators translate it as mind. When he said, and the God of this world has blinded their minds, it wasn't them blinded that it was blinded. It wasn't their minds. It was their perception. And somebody said, well, there's little g, so it had to be the devil. Well, there is no little g or big G in Greek and Hebrew. I think that's a good place to let you start, don't you know? I have done. I've set you up, brother. Go for it.
I want to say one thing before Lynn. Those in my group that know me know that probably 15 to 20 years ago, I was saying that, there was Passover and Pentecost and Tabernacles. And then I used to say, if you look at the picture of the parable of the tabernacle in the wilderness, the outer court was just a yard. Just a yard with a fence in it, and they did all the slaughtering. Can you imagine your husband coming home after a day of slaughtering and sacrificing with all that sweat and blood and guts on him? And, well, anyway, don't get into that. It's another thing. But anyway, I would say there has to be a place in God where you go, the Holy of Holies. We're talking, that's it, man. You got to get in the Holy of Holies, get in the presence of God. That's where I want to live. And I said, there has to be a place in God where you go out the back of that tent, jump over that fence, and completely go out beyond anything, out into God somewhere. Yes. I wanted to say, the paradox to me is we have already been seated in heavenly places.
Yes,
We are
yes,
already
yes,
in the image and likeness. We are already everything we're ever going to be. Everything you're wanting to be and become and find, you are already it. That is by position. It's not our experience yet. We haven't experienced the fullness of our position, and that's our paradox. This is where we learn to dance and embrace where we are now, and to keep in mind that position. But the position is we are seated in. The throne of God is the place of authority, the place of all-knowing, the consciousness. Paul said, grow up into the head. Don't be content to be a knee, a knuckle, or an elbow in this thing. You grow up into the head, because in the head is the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, God consciousness. He said, you grow up into God consciousness. Come to full stature of God as you in this dimension. So our position is progressively, as we grow and grow and grow, and our situations are pushing us, pulling us, pushing us, pulling us into more levels, until finally we will experience our full position. Then we too will say, you say it takes 4 months. You say it takes time. But I say time's not in this thing. I say I can collapse time. I say now is whatever I decree. It is created. And you know, if you took a sheet of paper, somebody give me a piece of paper. I'll probably get one.
How big?
Yeah, just a little. That's fine. If this is the Milky Way galaxy, and over here is Andromeda, or any other, any other, any. Oh, I said Annie. We think that if there's people coming from other worlds, we think how do they get here? It takes millions of years to go somewhere. No, all you got to do is come into your position enough that you learn the secret of collapsing time. Jesus said, you say it takes 4 months, but he said, I say it's now. The fields are now what you want them to be. This is part of coming into a higher level of experience of our position. We will learn to collapse time. There are people that are doing these things. I've done a lot of missionary work in Haiti and in Africa and places in the world. There's an old man in the backside of a mountain in Haiti. Takes him 3 days if him and his mule walks down to the city to get their supplies and come back. Well, this little voodoo man, bless his heart, him and his mule, from the mountain, on the backside of nowhere, goes to the big city and gets their supplies and comes back in 10 minutes. Now that's hard on the Western brain, but I could tell you some stuff about Africa and Haiti that would be a lot harder than that on your brain. But this is part of the experience. And the more we experience that position, the less paradox we have.
Wow.
Mark wants to take pictures of these. He never keeps them. Sure. Take a picture of the board. Take a picture of the board. And he never looks at them again.
But you never know.
Mark, what do you do with that?
That's so good.
Does that work, Mark? Will you stand by your board? Oh, sure. Hang on, let me get it. Let me just work on it. Oh, your shoulder's right up there. All right.
Don't let me get my show from.
And look at me. Oh, I know where it is. Got a piece of paper on it. Is this your board? I got you. It's a press release. You're running the red carpet, you know. I didn't get one. It was beautiful. Okay, then you're on. You got it.
Wow. Wow. Lynn, tell me, am I wrong to feel that there's absolutely changes? I mean, in his consciousness, hearing this word, change is happening right here.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only place.
Oh,
you can
yeah,
take
I say that's inevitable. When you come into a place like, for instance, it's taken me years to weed out the dead wood in North Georgia in my church, in my fellowship. I love doing that. And we're a small body. At one time, we were a very large, vibrant, charismatic body. And it took me quite a number of years to kind of weed that down to where we could become a place where there was just one mind. No confusion. And so when we travel, we come like this, people are beginning to come together in one mind. So there's not a hindering spirit.
Yes.
So there's nothing, and so what happens? It just, the transformation of the mind is just there. It's present. It's present. Hell. Okay, so wow. That's good because I wanted to show you some things about something I shared last night, just briefly in passing. And this is be an entire teaching series. I did a teaching, just a brief teaching at Gary's conference, the last one he did in North Carolina. Gosh, I guess it's been 8 or 9 years ago. And so I got up and I said, Jehovah is a tyrant. And wow, people, what? I said, and I knew that it kind of has a lot of repercussions. It has a lot. I said, I don't mean that in a negative way. I said, I mean in a way that you don't understand. If you understand Jehovah and you understand the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, it's not a bad thing. You just begin to understand. It's a picture of yourself. I said, Jehovah, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, actually in Hebrew represents the nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It represents those elements that you're made up of. In other words, it's a picture of your physical body, or it's a picture of God's body that's deposited in the realm called time. And so that just caused a lot of shaking among, especially Jehovistic type people. You know, they get really bent out of shape about things like that. And so we build golden calves, and not intending to, or not meaning to, but we do build golden calves, and we bow down and worship those golden calves, and somebody begins to poke at our golden calf, we get very upset. And usually it's just because of a misunderstanding, and that's all. So I wanted to address this particular question by using myself. And I was born, I shared this last night. Let me give you these dates. 21st. You all know these dates. All these dates are okay, and I'll just use this to show my personal birth chart. So I'm going to show you myself from an astrological birth chart design, and kind of let you see or know a little bit into who or what I am, and that's all. So this kind of answers this question, or this question was that how do we complete the cycle? And I said last night about us being whole, being made whole. Part of being made whole is that we are birthed in a cycle that's 360 degrees, or complete circle, or the complete astrological wheel, but yet we are born inside the perimeters of that wheel in a 9-month cycle. So it causes me to be shy 3 months of a whole cycle.
Yes.
So I made the statement that a part of my work in life is to complete the cycle, or in other words, to fill up that which is lacking in me. So, to give you a little bit of an idea, I was born on February the 19th, which puts me right on the cusp between Pisces and Aquarius. So that would cause me to carry certain attributes of both of those signs, in which I do. All you have to do is get you an astrological chart and read what the signs of Aries is about and what the signs of Pisces are about, and you can see I'm an amalgamation of the two of those signs, all pushed into one. And you are also wherever you fit in the birth wheel, okay? So that means that James and Rachel Hayes, they coagulated around May the 21st. Correct? I mean, that's just simple science, right? It's simple math. So 9 months later, here comes a little baby boy, and they called him Harold Lynn Hayes, and that was me. Now then, that leaves me shy Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. So if I understand these signs, and I begin to look at these signs, and I realize the sign of Aries is the sign of the ram, and it also is the symbol of the cerebellum, or the upper brain, the throne room of God. The place where the 12-paired cranial nerve connects, or the 24 elders sit around the throne. So I'm trying to show you, I want to show you some things about that. Then, it also connects me to Taurus. I'm lacking in Taurus. Taurus is the bull. It's the sign of the bull. So it's the symbol of the cerebellum, or the lower brain, which is called the carnal mind. It's the sensorial, or that part of your brain that is egoistic. It's not right or wrong. It's just that part that runs the physical apparatus called your sensual beings. Gives me smell, feel, see, taste, touch, hear, etc. So that's right. So what that would say is I'm shy in those areas. I don't have a good brain. You got it? My whole brain is lacking. That's what that would say. And so if you went back and also it's a sign of the feet, and if you would know me, you would know my feet give me problems. Always have and do, but I ignore those and I just say that they're better. They don't stop me, they just hurt a lot. So I just keep going on that. I'm still working on the wholeness of that part of my physical being. Back in school, when I was in school, I was not a good student. I actually didn't like school. I actually hated school. And actually, when I was a senior, they kicked me out of school. They dismissed me and told me never to come back and wouldn't give me my diploma. And that's just a fact. So they expelled me and said, and because for me to bring an F+ home was a really good grade. I made lousy grades. I didn't apply myself. I wasn't interested in school. In other words, I could not get my brain in gear at all. So when I left school faking it all the way through. I never read. I could read, but I didn't read. And I didn't want to read. And so when I had an experience in my life that I call it a transformation experience, I was around 26 years old, somewhere, 26 or 27, I'm not sure. And in that experience, I had a thing that happened in me that I began to want to read. And so since the student was ready, my teachers began to appear for me. Absolutely. Prior to that time, they had set me in the classroom, but I wasn't ready or asking questions, so they really couldn't teach me. They tried. It wasn't the fault of the teacher. It was the student. I was not prepared. I wasn't ready. And so we have an educational system that's so off base from the things of God that we take children and try to force them into things that they're not ready to receive. When I was ready to receive, I opened my mind at the age of 26. I have not stopped reading since. I mean, I am a reading fanatic. I love to read. I hated to read up until that time. So what happened is I'm beginning to fill up that which lacked in my being. Therefore, it's beginning to make me whole in the cycle. Now you have to look at where you fit in the cycle, and then you'll have to study to understand how the God-man or man-God fits in this cycle, because this cycle is set in stone
Yes.
in the stars in the
Yes.
heavens.
Yes.
It's immovable. It's unchangeable.
Oh, God.
It's God. It's eternal, period.
Yes.
So when you can grasp that, you can begin to realize that. And I tell everybody, I said, this is an astrological, medical mystery book. And
Yes.
if you could grasp that, not a history book. There's nothing about the Bible that's historical. It's not about history. It's about the mystery of God incorporating itself in human flesh. That is a
Yes.
paradox.
That's it.
And that paradox is not either or, but both and. And so I love paradoxes, just like Mark. I love the things that become paradoxical because I realize that's actually God at work and God in manifestation. So last night I just kind of brushed across that, and I hope that may help clear up a little bit of the question that you are asked. Does that help it a little bit?
I've got it down, and I've got Kerry's book on cell salts and everything, and he
Yes.
covers it so much. And I've only had it 2 weeks, and but in that book I'll get my answers.
You will. You will.
Yes.
And there are, and I say this because I read. I do not agree with everything I read. I may recommend books. I don't recommend a lot of books, even though I read a lot of books. And the reason I don't is there are some things in some books that I don't embrace because I'm just not there. I'm not saying that that writer is right or wrong. It's just that I'm not there at that place, okay? And so it's not for me to judge the author or the writer of what he was saying about the things that I read. It's just for me to begin to either embrace it or not. And that's all it is. It's just like when I recommend that God, Man Made Flesh by Carey
Yes.
and Inez Perry,
Yes.
Dr. Carey and Perry, I do not embrace everything in that book.
No, you can't.
So you can read the book, but it's one of the best books that I know of about this particular. And another good book is Polarity. I can't think of the name of it now. It's a volume 1 and volume 2. It's a big, thick book, and I can't recall it. But he and Dr. Perry ministered at the same time, but on different. Both of them were medical doctors. Okay, so let me jump in right here with this, and if you will, I want you to go with me in your Bible, if you have a Bible. And if you don't, that's fine. That's okay. You can make notes if you want to. But let me get you to go with me to some things, and let's read some things. I want you to go with me to Romans chapter 3. Hallelujah. This is very, very good, very interesting, I think. Okay, Romans chapter 3. Y'all all familiar with this passage of Scripture, and you all know it, and you all can probably quote it, and I know that. But I want to see if I can bring some clarity to the water that is such a muddy Jordan that we can't see what's flowing in shallow water.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And when I say that, I'm talking about the religious stream that every one of you have been baptized in is a stream of such muddy water that you have to practice a lot of stillness before you will ever be able to see what's happening in that river.
Yep.
And the only way that you can see what's happening in that river is through stillness, because in stillness there is a settling. And that's a difficult process for most people to practice, the art of stillness, and by that I'm just simply talking about stilling your mind, shut it down, get it quiet for just a short period of time, and then just wait to see what happens. When Jesus says, watch and pray, that's exactly what he was referring to. Learn to be still, learn to be quiet, learn to shut it all out and shut it all down so that the water can clear up, because it gets muddy, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, the storms come through, and the storms creates a lot of debris, and the water gets very muddy. If you give it some time, it'll settle down and it'll clear up. But we have been in a religious stream of mud, BS. I'll try to be nicer today. You understand what I'm saying? that we do not see very clear. I teach people, I tell them, I said, there are only one tree mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, not two trees. There's only one tree, and that one tree has to do with the physical body and the function of the heart and all of the veins that flow from the heart as the tree of life, and the nerve system, the psychological aspect, and all of the nerves that flow with the bloodstream throughout the whole body, so that when you prick your foot with a needle, it both bleeds and you feel it.
Yes.
Amen. Aren't you glad? That's both that you think are two trees working simultaneously at exactly the same time. And that's how it's designed to work. It's not the tree of the knowledge, the tree of life and the tree of gnosis or knowledge, i.e. good versus evil. It's tov and ra. And the word tov actually is translated for good, and the word ra, which is translated for the word evil, actually means beautiful.
Yes.
And I can't see anything wrong with that which is good and beautiful. And if you can, then you have to explain that to me, because I will be glad to listen to you explain that to me. But if you can take the Hebrew word ra, and you try to make it bad, you try to show me that it's bad, then I'm going to show you that everything about that word is only made up of two symbols. That's what Mark was talking about. The Hebrew is a language of symbols. It's a language of glyphs. It's all inclusive. It's about colors, it's about numbers, and it's about the alphabet. All of it in the same thing.
Yes.
All three in one. And when we start to grasp that, we go back and we understand that the Hebrew word ra has more to do with the attributes of God than the Hebrew word tov, translated good. Because the Hebrew word tov, translated good, has more to do with the physical dimension and how that the ra manifests itself in the physical dimension. Okay. So, looking at a word right here, or a passage of Scripture right here that's so grossly misused because, again, of misunderstanding. Going back to the Greek, harmatia and harmatano, going back to the Hebrew, chata and chata'ath, which actually in both languages, both Hebrew and Greek, both those words mean pretty much the same thing. One of them is like an archery term, has to do with missing the mark. The other one has to do more with offense. And a word that I meant to add to that word last night, offense, along with offense comes pain. And generally, when you experience pain in your heart, you like to protect that area of pain and not let anybody touch it. Sad to say, the only way you can heal pain is to let something touch it. Because usually to get pain out, there has to be an incision or something has to go in there to remove whatever is causing the infliction or the pain. And what happens, we close off that painful area and we guard it and we cover it and we ain't letting nobody go there. Period. Not even God. Nobody. You know why? It hurts. If you've got a place in your body that hurts, the natural response is to protect it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to expose, it's hard to be exposed. Even if somebody who's operating out of the Spirit and begins to expose things in your life, if they're doing it out of the Spirit, they're not doing it to hurt you. They're doing it to heal you, if their intentions are right, if their intentions are pure and good. So here we go. Romans chapter 3, look at verse 23. Y'all know this one. For all, what? All have sinned. I want to show you something that last night I talked a little bit about this glyph, this Hebrew glyph. Let me put it up here. Did anybody by any chance Google that? Did anybody look at that? You can, if you have an iPhone, you can Google it. It's the path of the sun in its journey in a year. And it's the symbol of eternity, right? Infinity. Number 8, infinity. The symbol of God. So this is the path. If you, like me, I meditate. I have a place in my office where I meditate. and I have a chair that's there, and then I have a window there watching the sun rise. And so I watch the sun as it moves back and forth throughout the year. Part of the year it's over here, and then part of the year it's way down here. And it's just a dance. It's just a constant dance. And what's it doing? It's dancing with the earth as the earth is dancing with it in what we call the wobble. Okay? And so that wobble, do you know what that wobble creates in a three-dimensional world? It creates this right here. And if I flip this chart over, in other words, I do it like this. I flip it over so that if I'm going from here and then I'm coming back to here, it would do this. How many of you know what that right there is called? That's called a what?
Sine wave.
Sine wave. Now, if you would do a deep study and research to the word sin, you will understand for all have entered into time, all of us. There's not one that hadn't entered into time or entered into the dimension of sin or sign. Why would we call it sin as in harmatia or in chata'ath and say that it has offense or pain? Because in time, it's a dimension of hills and valleys. It's a dimension of hot and cold. It's a dimension of up and down. It's a dimension of contrast. That's what makes it so beautiful. You don't want to remove the contrast. The contrast is that which you embrace and enjoy. For all have entered into sin or sign or time. Not one. You haven't come short of anything. You've entered into a beautiful dimension. This is where God wants to come and dance and embrace you and love you and show you who you are. You're just a reflection. So I know you have all read that. I told people, I said, you know, if you look at the book of Romans, Paul mentions the Hebrew word harmatia 46 times. He mentions the word harmatano one time. The word harmatano having more to do with missing of the mark, he only says it one time. Being an archery term just simply means you sidestep. Not a big deal. There's not a father that's teaching his child to shoot at a target that expects him to hit the target dead on any time. Maybe hardly ever, but occasionally he does, and the dad gets, oh, hallelujah, gets excited. Why? Because he hit the target. He didn't discard the child because the child didn't even hit the sign. Right? Yes. Well, we have allowed this muddy water of religion to discard every one of us. We say, well, I'm just a no good for nothing sinner. You didn't realize that you were just good for something and good for everything, God manifest human being. If you'd have had that concept and that idea, you wouldn't have thought so lowly of yourself. As a man thinketh, so is he. So we want to redeem some things that we have been taught. Sin is not good versus bad. It's not right versus wrong. It's not any of these things. It's just simply you entering as God the dimension of time. That's God's choice, not your choice. You think that it was your choice. It was a discussion that you and God had, and God said, okay, I'll send you in through this. I'll send you here, Lynn, through James and Rachel Hayes. It wasn't anything they did. It was what God did. I was in that structure of the seed that come through my father into my mother. Okay, I want to read you some things I wrote. There's a Hebrew word, it's called abra, kar, abra. If I said that same word, if I said that in Aramaic, I would say abracadabra. Yes. Say, how are you going to open it? Well, abracadabra. Well, the word abra, kar, abra in Hebrew actually means, as I speak, I will create. Oh, yes. And so that word is constantly used as a weaving thread through Scripture to let you know. Just read the book of Proverbs. It tells you constantly, out of the mouth proceeds life and death.
Oh, yes.
You are justified by the words of your mouth, and you are condemned by the words of your mouth. Abracadabra. As you speak, you create. You create the very things. How do you do that? And I want to show you something about how that happens. It's from a thought in your mind, your tongue begins to do a thing, and that thing that your tongue does is called this. It's called a sine wave or a vibration. A vibration of up and down, high energy, low energy, as they come together. And whether they're coming together very slow, methodically, or they're coming together very fast, it's irrelevant. They are beginning to cause a vibration. And so as they cause, what's happening here is I want you to notice something that happens with the vibration. The up and the down coming together and creates this vibration. It creates a thing that we call polarity, doesn't it? Two poles, positive and negative, or the up and the down. The two poles, positive and negative, up and down, they begin to do this dance. The up is generally symbolized by the plus sign, or red, or fire. The down is generally symbolized by the green color, or water. And so when you put fire in water, you have a sound, and the sound is shh, which is the Hebrew glyph for the sheen. That's the letter 300 in the Hebrew alphabet. And it actually is the same word that would be used in many different places to symbolize fire in water. What happens when you put fire in water? You cause the potential for creativity. And I tell you right now, the earth is a place, it is a seedbed for that potentiality to constantly happen. Therefore, in Genesis 1:2, it's called Tahu and Bohu. Got translated form and void. Really, it should have been translated as it is a cesspool of creation. Yes. Should not have been translated form and void. Makes you think that there's not anything there. It's just exactly the opposite. Tahu and Bohu simply means that it is swarming. It is swirling with creativity. It can't not create. Why? Because the fire has deposited itself in the water, and the whole earth is shh.
Yes.
Oh.
And that comes through you and out of you.
Yes.
And it constantly is doing the very things that God designed it to do. So these Hebrew glyphs, which I want to, by the way, let me just quickly do this. These two numbers constantly dance in Scripture, and you'll see these numbers predominant everywhere you look and everywhere you turn. 12, which are the 12, this number actually has reference to the divine mind, and this number 7 has reference to complete, or completion, or perfection, or the physical body. The physical body is a complete, perfect work of the divine mind.
Yes, it is.
So what you see is you see 7 and 12 constantly dancing throughout the Scriptures. You open up in the Genesis, what we call the creation story, which I don't have any problem with that now. Many years ago I went through times where I grappled with it and I got mad, and then I got glad, and then I got mad, I got glad. So I finally come to realize to tell a story and to release this story is a beginning. For me to understand the story and for me to understand what the story is saying, now that's a beginning for me, okay? So when I began to understand the Hebrew word yom actually meant facets of life or fullness of life or life being lived, that's what the word yom means, and it's translated that way. Psalms 91, I think it's 91:12, and in Exodus, quite a number of different places, it shows you how the word yom is used in the Hebrew language. But then in Genesis chapter 1, it got translated for the word day. So when you and I looked at it under the word day, we actually lost the idea that it was actually the picture of the fullness of life of the embryo that grows in the womb of the mother in Genesis 2 and 3. So I tell people, I said, Genesis, if you can ever, and you can spend the rest of your life in Genesis chapter 1 through chapter 12, you can never ever get out of those, because there is more. There's more in the first 3 chapters of Genesis than you would probably be able to extract in a whole lifetime.
Yes.
In the Hebrew code.
Yeah.
But if all you do is read it in a literal story, a literal historical story, you have missed the whole point.
Yeah.
Because Genesis 1, 2, and 3 is a picture of you. It is the divine statement of all statements. As above, so below. So without, so within. Man, know thyself. If you don't know that, you don't know anything. And until we come to that place that this is about me knowing me, this is not about me knowing you. This is not about me judging you. This is not about me weighing you. This is about me knowing me. Me looking at me being able to look at me in the mirror of life. Me being able to embrace me in the mirror of life. Me being able to embrace me when I'm down or when I'm up. That's what it's about. It's not about our judgment. It's not about our condemnation. We get that from the muddy water of religion.
Yes.
Oh, hallelujah.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's all about this dance. It's all about the dance of the 12, the fire, the divine mind, about the 7, the water, the physical matter. And it's where you get all of these different places you see throughout Scripture. You'll see this. And these dance together with the numbers. These dance together. The numbers 3, 3.5, 4, 5. I mean, you know, you just go all the way through. I think John, that's one of John's, what call it, bailiwick, that's his love. His passion is numbers. And mine is somewhat, but I have other passions too. So I want you to go with me to Psalms chapter 51. This is where we kind of opened up last night and talked. And we'll come back and visit this just a minute and say some things because we're learning, right?
Yes.
Amen. And the only way that you can learn is, first off, you have to sit at the feet of the teacher and open your mind.
Yes.
So, you know, if, again, that's what we have been able to do and create there in North Georgia, an atmosphere where we can learn. And it's taken a lot of years of plowing and digging to create that atmosphere where we can learn. We remove a lot of sticks and stones and a lot of other offenses so that we can do that. But now I see that happening all over where we travel and where we go, because there's a hungry people. There's people that's beginning to say, maybe the story wasn't told just exactly the way it should have been told. So the first prerequisite is an open mind. It's just exactly like we found over here.
Yes.
When we open this portal, when the heart chakra begins to open up, and that portal opens, I'm telling you right now, you become a recipient for a torrent. And I tell you, God will come in like a mighty rushing wind.
Yes.
That's all God's way. And I'll rephrase that. It's not necessarily that God's in your heart knocking to come in, or outside you knocking to come in your heart. God's in your heart knocking to come out.
Yes.
He just wants an exposure. He's just saying, look, you know, give me an opportunity here. I'll dance with you. I'll walk with you. I'll talk with you. I'll spend the cool of the evening. We'll share different things. So here in Psalms chapter 51 and verse 5, it says, but I was shapen in iniquity. And again, I kind of dislike some of the ways they translated these words, but it's okay. I'm not fighting again with translators anymore. I used to, but I don't. I was shapen in iniquity. Kiel, chiel, whichever way, the Hebrew glyph, sha'et or ha'et, can be, which is the symbol or the number 8, can be pronounced numbers of different ways. And so one of the ways that I would pronounce it would be ka'el for this particular word. And again, I want to give you the definition of this word so that you can hear this and you can kind of begin to embrace what this word means, because the Word is so powerful, it's so phenomenal that many times I think that we don't realize what's happening or what's being said. Let's see, I wanted to read that because I wrote it all down somewhere, but I don't know where I wrote it. Where did I write that down? Here we go. I'll just get it right here. It means to dance. Now, I have people, I remember the first time Mark called me, I don't remember how many years ago, 5 or 6 years ago or so, 7 years ago. I guess we met at, where did we meet at? College Station?
College Station, yes.
Anyway, I went out there to speak at a conference Barbara was doing with, who was that?
Gary, David Halls.
David Halls, yeah. Anyway, Mark began to ask me questions about Hebrew. He said, which concordance do you use? And I said, well, I have and I didn't know what he was trying to get at. I said, well, I have Young's and Strong's and some others that I use. And he said, oh, really? So what I'm telling you, you ain't going to find in Young's or Strong's.
Yeah.
Okay? What I'm telling you, you will find only out of research, only out of study and learning how to tell you. Anybody can do what I'm doing. Anybody can do that. But you have to apply yourself to study symbols and signs. I had a teacher 35 years ago, Dr. Fuchsia Pickett. I don't know if any of you ever heard of Dr. Pickett. Dr. Fuchsia Pickett was one of my teachers. And she told me, she said, Lynn, if you do not understand, if you can't come to a place where you can understand signs and symbols, metaphors, types, and shadows, you will never understand the Scripture. Well, that resonated with me. I thought, okay. So I began a quest to try to memorize names, numbers, cities, places, etc., so that I would begin to get a grasp of what signs and symbols were. So for me, when I began to break the Hebrew code down, or I began to break the Hebrew words or glyphs down, I realized it's a coded language. And I know that if you don't know the code, you cannot unlock the treasure chest that God has for you. So what I would always try to do is I try to give you how the code and how the code breaks down, or how the code, and when you begin to do that, then I can define the word. I can get a definition of the word. So if you look this up in Strong's, it will give you some of what I'm going to say, or Young's, or any of the other concordances. And those are, I ain't throwing stones at that. I'm saying you have to start somewhere, you have to have a place. I like Strong's simply because of a numbering system, which I think that's pretty phenomenal to have a numbering system, a place that I can go to. So this word that I'm defining right here, that's shaping, because here's where you're shaping. You're shaping on the wheel of God's time, the wheel of the divine work or the divine plan that God is instituting, not you. You are the recipient of that. You're the visible manifestation of that work, okay?
Yes. So
that's not something that you did, but this word means to dance. It means to tremble. I want you to hear this, because this, you will be able to understand and feel this. I do. I can sense this many times in my inner being. It means to tremble. It means to trust. To truly move in a dance, you've got to trust your partner.
Yes.
You've got to be able to confide in your partner so that when you're going backwards or when you're being dipped, you're going to be helped. It'd be hell if you got dipped and dropped. You wouldn't trust your partner so well. So this word carries this idea: to dance, to tremble, to trust, to shake. You know, many times you go back 100, 200 years, and the Shakers and the Quakers, what were they experiencing? They were experiencing a divine encounter. You and I experienced it. I experienced that many times, a divine encounter where I begin to feel a pulsation, a shaking inside me. Not nervousness. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's what it means. It means to shake. And in the shaking, it means to shapen. What's being done here? If you understand the sine wave when it's moving from the time of coagulation, when James and Rachel got together, they coagulated. All of a sudden, there began to be a waking, a shaking, a vibration inside Rachel's womb. And God was growing something, and that something happened to be gestated and pushed out of the garden on February the 19th, and it manifested as Harold Lynn Hayes. Glory, hallelujah. That be me. It was a divine dance. It was an encounter of waking and shaking and vibrating.
Yes.
And I did that, I'm doing that. Hallelujah.
That's right.
And plan to do it for another 40 or 50 years.
That's right.
God willing. And the creek don't rise. And I always said God is always willing, and the creek we can get a boat over.
Yes.
So we'll get across. So, you know, to kind of give you the idea of where I'm coming from with that word, that's a breakdown of the value of the numbers and how the letters fit in that word. Using the cha'at, using the yod, which is number 10, and then using the lamid, which is number 30. And then taking all that, I put that together and I begin to say, oh, okay, I can see where this word begins to mean these particular things. So it's just a matter of addition, and then that begins to equal this. This equals that. So it's something that anybody can learn to do. So it's not something that I learned to do. But for most of us, most people in all of Christianity, the Bible is the most misunderstood book. And they will actually say that with their own lips. Most people I know don't find it ashamed to say, I don't understand the Bible. Therefore, I don't read it. Therefore, I don't blame you. Why? Because it's so confusing. It is. It is when you look at it from the doctrinal mind of belief system that you and I have been so seduced of. I mean, we have literally been the recipients of a rape that's gone on for 1,700 years.
Yes.
Our minds, the beautiful mind that God has given you, has literally been raped and has been pillaged and torn apart with false ideas, beliefs, and things that have created a body of people that are so tyrannical, so mean, they don't trust the one on the opposite side of the street that even carries the same name they do. Because this is the First Baptist, and that one over there is the Second Baptist. And bless God, they don't like each other.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. Why? How could that possibly be all coming from one book? It should not be that. You know, I have been in the auto repair business my whole life. I have a garage, I own a garage, and I have a young guy that works for me. He's a technician, and he's a technician because he went to college and he got a degree. Now me, I'm a mechanic because I just learned it by turning the wrenches, by hard work. So there's a lot of difference in a technician and a mechanic. Mine's old school mindset, mechanic. He's a young trained person. I did not experience the training that he experienced. So I bowed to him and I said, Tony, do this. And he does that. Why? Because he has the skill. He has the knowledge. He's learned the skill. What we have done in Christendom, we have trusted the pastor to have the skill, and all he had was the deception that someone gave him.
Yes.
Because I remember years ago when I began to question this, and I began to question those of my authorities, they would rebuke you right up front. They would tell you, you know, just shut up and believe this. They didn't take too kindly to what you were going to say or do. I want to read something to you that this guy, I recommend him very highly. He's one of my favorite authors. I've read for years. I have everything in print that I know of that he has written, and that's Alvin Boyd Kuhn. He's my mentor, and this is a book of his called the Alvin Boyd Kuhn Collection. It's a compilation of lectures that he did. He was a linguistic, spoke 7 languages. I mean, he was a phenomenal writer. So I want to read you some things that he wrote in this particular book. So just bear with me and let me read this. It says, the ancient method was based on a now completely lost and unknown literary practice. Hear what I said? The ancient method was based, and what he's talking about, the ancient method was the ancient method of understanding the ancient writings. And to understand the ancient writings, the symbols and glyphs, you had to be initiated, or you had to be in school in what the glyphs were the code of. What did they mean? If I drew this glyph, what was I talking about? If you come in as an uninitiated person and I put that on the board or I begin to talk about that, you would be in darkness. You would not understand what I was saying. You follow what I'm saying? So you had to be initiated into the teaching. So here's what he's saying. The ancient method was based on a now completely lost and unknown literary practice. Instead of writing treatises in ordinary languages, the aim was to put truth in the form of representations or pictures, such as dramas, allegories, myths, parables, fables, apologies, number graphs, and pictographs on the star cluster in the sky. Now, I resonate with that simply because I see it everywhere around me. If I begin to look at the canopy of the stars and the cluster of the stars and I realize they are set in stone, and if I'm going to call them the prophets of God, I begin to realize as the prophets of God, their word stands true. But if I look at men and I call a man a prophet of God, and one time something spews out of his mouth in error, and another time something spews out of his mouth in what I call truth, he is a mixed bag, and I can't trust that. So in the Old Testament scriptures, when they were talking about the prophets of God, or the seers, or those who were speaking the oracles of God, they were not talking about men who were born of the womb of a woman. They were talking about the 12 astrological prophets, or the signs that are in the heaven, that always speak the truth, because they can't not. Why? Because they are so designed, so set in a socket, that all they can do is emanate the energy of the truth that they represent. Do you understand that?
Yes.
So, let me read that. Instead of writing the treatise in ordinary language, instead of writing the treatise in ordinary language, this is literature. This is a literature book. And if I do not understand the symbols of this book, I will not understand the language of this book. Okay? And we constantly use the language of this book, not knowing the symbol of this book, not knowing that God is androgynous, and not knowing that you, whether you are manifest in a physical male body or manifest in a physical female body, you are still both and. That's confusing. When you're reading a book that is about you and it says son and you are a daughter, you think, it ain't talking to me. Yes, it is. Again, not understanding the language. Not understanding. Instead of writing treatises in ordinary language, the aim was to put truth in the form of representation or pictures of it, such as dramas, allegories, myths, parables, fables, apologies, number graphs, pictographs on the star cluster in the sky. The picturization of truth was the work of the dramatist rather than of plain prose expositors. Now, to read Alvin Boyd Kuhn, I'll tell you first off, you're going to have to get you a dictionary. He's a linguist. He uses big words, huge, great big words, college words, you know. So you might as well just say that up front. So he's not necessarily an easy read, but a phenomenal read. The elements in man's nature that were the real actors in the drama of his life were made personal in the characters in the story. Huh? I'll read that to you again. The elements in man's nature that were the real actors in the drama of his life.
Yes.
Now what do we have today? We have these programs that are, what are they called, drama programs?
Yeah.
And people are hooked on them. I guess reality shows, reality programs. I never watched one of them. I hear people talking to me about them all the time. Why are they so predominant right now? Because they're showing us who we really are. Yeah, God's in charge of everything. Yeah. Hollywood. I get more out of Hollywood than I do any church. I don't watch TV preachers. They're lying to you. They're lying to you. When they're telling you that they're riding in their jet and God gave them money, they want you to give us the money, keep this jet going so that we can be holy and godly when we get there, because we're not going to ride in a commercial jet with all them demons. Don't give him your money.
No, no.
You're a fool if you give him your money.
That's right.
I could call his name. I heard him say that right out of his own
Yes,
mouth.
sir.
And every one of you know it.
Sad.
I think it's sad.
Yep.
It hurts me. It hurts me that human beings are being that raped
Yes.
by, and, well, okay. Let me read this again. The elements in man's nature that were the real actors in the drama of his life were made personal in the characters in the story. Just as, listen to this, just as in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Snow White represents the pure divine nature in man, i.e. his soul, and the dwarfs personify the 7 elementary principles that build up his physical body and thus serve her, i.e. his divine nature, in all mechanical ways. So you have to understand, and I keep saying this, and I'm glad of what Mark put out here. I keep saying that you're not trying to kill your ego. You're trying to get your ego to submit to you and serve you. You do not want to serve it. You want it serving you. It becomes a tremendous attribute for you. He goes on and he says, the archaic method was designed to dramatize truth, not to write elaborate dissertations upon the genius which strove to construct the formulas that express the forces and processes of life that was the dramatic genius. Not specifically literary genius in the modern sense. When neither writing nor reading was universal, listen to this. In other words, they didn't all go to school back then. There wasn't school on every corner. When neither writing nor reading was universal, the only practical way to portray the idea was by pictorializing, that's a big long word, pictorializing them in an allegory or a myth. Thus the understanding, and what I constantly hear, you hear me constantly talk about the mythos. When the mythos is told right, if I can train myself, if I can submit myself to God in such a way that I can allow God through me to begin to speak His drama of truth with the energy and the intensity that He's showing it to me, you will feel it. You will pick up on it. You may even say, oh, as it penetrates your being and brings life to you.
Yes.
It's designed to be that way. You may even get excited, want to jump up and run, and that's okay. Why? Because it's all energy. It's energy that's dancing with you, embracing you, and making passionate love to you. Whew. I may take off running a minute myself.
Right, some of it out.
Neither writing nor reading was universal. The only practical way to portray the idea was by pictorializing them in an allegory or a myth, or a construction that might appear outwardly fantastic to an ignorant person, but would nevertheless subtly intimate to deeper intuition the forms of the mighty truth itself.
Amen.
Glory, glory, glory. Let me cut this. I want to read something over here. I can just get lost in this guy for protagonists with other religions debating with Christianity could well say that Christianity is the religion that has afflicted its devotees with the conviction of universal sin, and that without reference to the sinner's merit or demerit, it has convicted them of sin before they were even born.
Oh, yeah.
What the psychological resultant of such a general persuasion and infatuation on the minds of billions of people over the generations since Bethlehem could be, and tragically has been, the modern revelations of the science of psychoanalysis are well prepared to inform you.
Yes.
The enormity of this psychic bill is beyond estimate.
Yes.
I stand in awe of that. Because the very thing that gives you, stimulates you, encourages you to stimulate your psychic ability, your mind, your gnosis, is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yes.
It's the very thing religion has taught you to stay away from, and it's the very central theme of the Bible that shows you without knowledge you perish. Without knowledge you are held captive. Without knowledge you don't know who you are.
Yes.
And they have told you, don't go. That is the tree of Satan. That is the tree of the devil. That is a tree you don't want to go there. It is evil. Bought it hook, line, and sinker, didn't we? 1,700 years we have bought it. And we have just done unheard of things to ourselves. Just exactly like he says, the psychological damage of this is not even estimable. You can't estimate it. It's been far more damaging than we can see. And when I speak to people, I feel sometimes my words bounce back to me, because it's not because of them. It's not maybe because they not want to learn. It's not because they're not a great person. It's not because of anything. It's because of the inundation of religious garbage that's blocked the mind. It's damaged us. There is a healing that's taking place. Because this is not a message that's unique to me. My stick man is something that God gave me out of a creation of teaching the book of Revelation as it be the revelation of a human being. Not a story that we have attached a misuse of the word seer called a prophet to, and not even knowing what the scriptures were referring to when it talked about a seer or a prophet. A prophet of God was one who understood the atmosphere and the positioning of the people because of his mingling and engaging with them. He knew where they were. He knew what they would accept. He knew what they thought. He knew what they felt. And he went back to the king and he said, don't do that. Do this. Do this. Don't do that. He wasn't telling them about the future. He didn't have anything to do with the future. Nobody knows the future but God, because in God there's not even a future. It's always now. It's an unfolding of eternity. Yet we have prostituted this thing called the prophetic, not even understanding and not knowing and not doing our homework. Mine is just a cry to say, let's get together and do some homework. Let's do some real serious Bible study to see what this book has been telling us, what it's always been saying to us. And as we do that, if we begin to do that, wow, what begins to happen is phenomenal. Okay. Woo. Breathe. That's what they tell you. Go to the hospital. Just breathe. Calm down, midget. Breathe. I want to show you a couple of things in this dance. Oh man, I don't know how to show you a word here. Let me give you a word, a Hebrew word, and then I will work with this word some more, either tonight or tomorrow, or the next time we get together. Because this is a non-ending saga. It's forever. And so I'll just write this up here for you in Hebrew. And as I do that, I would like to, which I will, I'll have to do this tonight or tomorrow sometime. I'll give you a couple more words in Hebrew that have a lot of similarity to this one word. This one word is used in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Barashit bara in et shamayim. That's this word right here, shamayim. Now, what we have done with that word and what religion has done to us with that word, again, I go back to what Alvin Boyd Kuhn, the damage of it cannot even be estimated. It's beyond even thinking. Because what they did with that word and what they have done to you and me with that word is they have really messed up our psyche. They have done so many things to us. And so, that word, barashit in the beginning, bara, Elohim, God created, et the shamayim, heaven. This word, shin, mem, yod, final mem, this word has values 300, 40, 10, and 600. Now, if I start to break that down and I begin to look at that word much closer, what I'll begin to see is that this word actually is talking about, I can find right here in this particular glyph, I find the word water. In this glyph, I find the word water. Have you ever heard of waters above and waters below?
Yeah.
That happened to be in Genesis 1, 7, and 8. Waters above and waters below. Now, what in the world would so much water have to do with the word for heaven? Because how many of you have ever heard this phrase? The first Adam, and last Adam. Have you ever heard those two words? First Adam and last Adam. How many of you have ever heard that this one was the guy in the garden and this one was the guy in Gethsemane? Sure you have. It's not either. It's not either one. This one has to do with the material, physical matter substance that God used to create humanity. By taking the four, that's the Hebrew glyph for number 4, by taking the 4 elements, nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, earth, air, fire, and water, and mingling them together, and voila, you become a recipient of that. You're the results, okay? And this one right here has to do with taking that from a higher essence, taking this and bringing it up to this. So it's taking you from a physical being to taking you up to a divine physical being. A divine being that, right here, duality without separation. And so what I would call that, let me give you a word for that, and I would call that, how I would use that word. I would call this duality without separations. What I would call it would be polarity. And so when I understand polarity works in divinity. And as I begin to see that, I begin to recognize that, I think, okay. Now, what I want to do, I'm going to disconnect from right here because it is a lot. But that's fine. You've got a lot of questions to ask. That's fine. Because what I want to do is I'm going to break this word down. It's called heaven. I'm going to break that word down, and I want you to pay attention. Because it's very important that you begin to see. These are codes. And when you start to see the codes, you begin to unlock the treasure chest. And when you unlock the treasure chest and you open it up, and, oh, wow, that's not... God got that here there for me. I said, absolutely, yes. This is for you. This is for me. And wow, what happens then is my life gets changed and transformed.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll just unhook again. If you have questions, and I realize it does promote a lot of questions, just follow the idea that we have with this conference. Just write your questions on that, and we will try to work them in and give answers for them. Okay?
Lynn, the word shaping in iniquity in Psalm 51, that exact phrase does not appear in the New Testament. But when you translate in Hebrew, I found the exact wording in the Greek, and I'll share on that this afternoon.
All right. That'd be fun. Okay, y'all.
I just want to say one thing. He was talking about the tree of knowledge. In Egypt, in the temple of Ramses III, there it's carved in stone. Okay, it was carved in that day, thousands of years ago. There's a picture of Ramses sitting, robed in white, sitting on the white throne of judgment. And he's praying for wisdom and knowledge of how to rule his people righteously. And so then there's a woman to the side of him, his wife, and she's reaching up from a tree, and she's taking a piece of fruit from that tree, not to destroy her husband, but for her husband to succeed and be successful. And the Catholic Church, when they translated the Bible into the King James Version, they twisted that around. And see, they said the woman gave him the fruit to put him out, to destroy him, to make him evil, to make him bad. Now, this is carved in stone. You can't deny it. It's right there in front of you. So the tree of knowledge is given to us for knowledge. Get wisdom, but with your get understanding. Get the understanding of the knowledge. And when you know something, nobody can take it from you.
That's right.
When you know something and you conceive of that thing and you bring forth the fruit of that, that's your baby. That's your child. You have birthed it and nobody can take it. So we're learning to untwist so many things that they twisted and deceived us with some of these translations. So just get over it and realize the tree of knowledge is for it's the tree of knowledge to give us the knowledge to find out who we are, so that we can live out of our position and experience our full position to fulfill the Word of God, of His Word made flesh. As long as I live in the revelation of Christ in me, the hope of glory, the hope. You hoping because you ain't got it. It's like a carrot being dangled in front of a donkey's nose. You're always after it.
You never get it.
But then when you move on and you see, my life is dead, and it's now hid with Christ in God. If Christ is in me, I'm visible and He's hid in there. But if I'm hid in there, then He comes out and He's made visible. And how do we get this understanding? Through knowledge. Through knowledge. Coming to know. Intercoursing and knowing who you are. And when you know, you can't unknow something you know. When you know it, you've got it. You can't unknow. If you believe it, you hadn't got it. You're believing for something you don't yet have. You're hoping and believing and hoping and wondering why it never comes. It never comes. Because it's that carrot. You're pushing it away. But to embrace it and to bring it in your knowing. When you know, you can't unknow.